We hear these words thrown around all the time in texts, conversations, arguments, even jokes. Believe me. Trust me. Two little phrases that seem harmless, but they create more confusion than we realize. Because most people think believing someone and trusting someone is the same thing, when in reality, there's a deep emotional and psychological difference between them. And if you don't understand that difference, misunderstandings become part of your daily life, without you ever knowing. And once you finally understand what separates these two words, your conversations become clearer, your relationships become healthier, and your emotional reactions become far more stable. Because belief governs your mind, but trust governs your heart. Let's step into the journey that shows you exactly how. And this confusion isn't rare, it's everywhere. You see it at home, at work, in friendships, in relationships. People desperately try to explain themselves, but the words they choose create emotional chaos. Someone might be asking for belief, but the other person thinks they're asking for trust. Someone may be offering trust, but the other person only hears belief. This misunderstanding leads to arguments, hurt feelings, and assumptions that were never true. To understand how these two concepts separate, let's follow two friends, ordinary people like you and me, through one simple conversation. This tiny interaction, on an ordinary day, reveals the hidden layers inside the words believe and trust more powerfully than any textbook definition could. So friend B suddenly bursts out, "You won't believe what I saw last night. A UFO." The enthusiasm is real. The emotion is real. The excitement is overflowing. But friend A, being the logical one, is caught between wanting to support his friend and wondering whether the story is even possible. And in that exact moment, the concept of belief steps onto the stage. To believe something means your mind says yes. Your thoughts align with the information. You accept it as reality. Belief is mental. It's your brain analyzing details, comparing past experiences, and deciding whether something feels true or false. So when friend B shares a UFO story, the question becomes, does the mind accept this? And the answer is no. Friend A doesn't reject his friend. He simply doesn't accept the information as factual truth. His mind looks for logical explanations, rational alternatives, scientific possibilities. He listens, he cares, but believing the story? That's a different matter entirely. But here comes the twist. Just because he doesn't believe the story doesn't mean he thinks his friend is lying. In fact, he respects the sincerity in his friend's eyes. He recognizes that his friend genuinely felt something unusual. This moment opens the door to the deeper, more emotional concept, trust. To trust someone means much more than accepting their words. It means you feel secure with them. You depend on their character. You believe in their intentions, even if you don't believe every detail they share. Trust isn't about information. Trust is about emotional safety. And this difference becomes crystal clear in what happens next. Later, when friend B needs to leave town, he hands over his house keys. And without thinking twice, friend A accepts them. He may not believe the UFO story, but he absolutely trusts the person standing in front of him. He trusts his honesty, his responsibility, his loyalty. And right here, in this tiny moment, lies the clearest difference between believing someone and trusting someone. You believe with your mind, your logical brain. You trust with your heart, your emotional center. Belief is about truth. Trust is about safety. Belief is intellectual. Trust is relational. Believe means to mentally accept something as real or true. It is a cognitive process, your brain examining facts, possibilities, and logic. Belief is shaped by evidence, memories, observations, and reasoning. When you believe something, you're saying, "My mind agrees with this." Beliefs can change quickly when new information arrives because belief depends on truth, not emotion. Trust is emotional confidence, a deep sense of security you place in a person, not in a piece of information. Trust comes from experience, from consistency, honesty, loyalty, and integrity. It takes time to build, seconds to break, and years to repair. When you trust someone, you say, "My heart feels safe with you." Trust depends on character, not facts. You might say, "I believe you studied, but I don't trust you'll pass." This means the information sounds true, your mind accepts it, but your emotional confidence in the outcome is missing. You may not believe every scientific explanation a doctor gives. Maybe it's confusing or too technical, but you trust his experience, his training, and his intention to help you. This is trust without complete belief. You might believe the promise because it sounds sincere, but you don't trust their habits because they have a history of forgetting or delaying. Belief exists. Trust does not. And sometimes it flips. You may not believe someone's strange, exaggerated story, but you trust the person deeply because they've been loyal for years. Your mind disagrees, but your heart still feels safe. Belief opens the door to information, to facts and details. Trust opens the door to emotional connection, to the bond between two people. And these two doors never lead to the same room. You can believe someone's words and still refuse to trust them, because trust remembers wounds that belief forgets. And you can trust someone deeply even without believing everything they say, because trust remembers love, loyalty, and dependability. You may not believe every financial detail your advisor presents. Maybe numbers confuse you or sound unrealistic, but you trust their professionalism and integrity enough to follow their advice. Belief questions facts. Trust depends on character. When a child jumps into a parent's arms, the child isn't calculating facts or analyzing physics. They don't believe the parent is strong. They trust they won't be dropped. This is pure, instinctive, emotional trust. So here's the essence. Belief is mental acceptance of a statement. Trust is emotional confidence in a person. Belief asks, "Is this true?" Trust asks, "Are you reliable?" Belief changes fast. Trust changes slowly. So the next time you hear someone say, "Believe me," or "Trust me," pause and understand what they're really asking for. The mind and the heart do not work the same way, and knowing the difference gives you power in understanding people, handling conflicts, and building stronger relationships. Now think for a moment. How many people in your life confuse belief with trust every single day? Share this video with them. Help them use English more clearly and understand emotions more deeply. And follow for more powerful, beautifully simple explanations.